customer of your client, a major customer of your client declared bankruptcy on January 5th because of declining financial position. A major customer of your client declared bankruptcy on January 5th because of declining financial condition. They confirmed the account receivable, the amount they owed your client as of December 31st. But if they declared bankruptcy a few days later because of declining financial health, chances are that customer was bankrupt on December 31st. So that receivable was probably not collectible, at least in whole, as of year end. That would require an adjustment to the financials. But let's say a major customer of your client has to file bankruptcy on January 5th because a January 4th uninsured fire that destroyed 50% of their productive capacity. Until that fire, that customer probably could have paid their receivable. So no adjustment made on the financials, but that certainly would require disclosure because chances are they can't pay now. Note the difference between the two situations.
Okay, I see the difference, but what if this customer is a vendor and they owe, or like say my customer, as of December 31st, they said, okay, I still owe Amanda $1 million. Then they have a fire and they really can't pay it, even though the stuff was, what do you do then?
Well, if it's an unexpected event and everything was valid, December 31st at midnight, everything was fine, I think only disclosure is required. Okay. Only disclosure. What if the mysterious fire was intentionally set or something, you know what I mean? Then if you can prove that it was uncollectible before that date, then you require adjustments. Now they also give a listing on 766 and 767 of how you might become aware of these subsequent period events. And you can kind of read those over. Part of it includes the letter of representation. Now one of the issues, now they also talk here about things to complete the audit, and I added that as a topic today. One of the things that's in the chapter is the management representation letter versus what they call a management letter. The management representation letter is very important. It's an essential part of every audit. On page 768 and 769, they go into this. It's more for psychological reasons to impress upon management their responsibility for asserting assertions to the financials, to remind them of their potential misstatements or omissions to the financials, to document their responses. Now, they talk about that, but during the course of the audit, if a questionable issue occurred and you reached a tentative understanding with management, have them include that in the management representation letter. Remember the CYA, we had a case back in the legal chapter, I think in week 2, where it said the management declared we could only count physical inventory at one location per day over 14 days. And it turned out inventory went from one location to the next location under cover of darkness. That should have been in the management representation letter. The only way that inventory could be counted was, and indicate why. That covers us. It won't guarantee we won't be liable to third parties, but it sure as heck will help. Plus it has a psychological impact. The management letter they're talking about was what at Arthur Andersen we call blueback points. These were suggestions we came up with during the course of the audit for the client to improve their performance. In my era, we often did that as a way of getting additional consulting fees. Part of that now would no longer be allowed under Sarbanes-Oxley. We called them blueback points because they were typed up. There was a blue cover that folded over and was stapled at the top that was blue, hence blueback points. They also show you a completing the audit checklist. In my era, it was like this. You had to check it off and sign off. But today it's electronic. And until you answer all the questions appropriately, like, yes, we've done this, you can't sign off on the audit. On page 773, they show something. It's a different form than what we used at Anderson. We had that PAJE schedule where we basically showed proposed adjusting entries that came up throughout the course of the audits. Maybe reclassification, some of them might have been. And then we would go with the controller or the CFO, we'd go through every entry, and we would basically either require them to book the entry or we would pass on the proposal as immaterial. They also talk about communicating, issuing the audit report. I want you to address this in the online discussion. Some of you still owe me some posts. The financial statements are one part, but there's also a lot of commentary in the audit report. And if that commentary includes items that are misleading, you have to address those. Tell the client you've got to change the wording. You're giving an overly optimistic projection here in the CEO's letter to the shareholders. It's misleading. It's deceptive. So you have to look at that as well. They talk about communicating with the audit committee. Some people have addressed that. I don't know, I think Letitia or something did that. Read about that. Also, subsequent discovery of facts on 778, then we'll look at a homework problem or two. The audit has been completed. The financials have gone out. Something that didn't show up. We were not necessarily negligent in the audit. We may have done the audit fine. But some misstatements that didn't come up in the sample have now arisen. What do we do? That's what I want you to address in the online discussion as well. If it's minor, we could go and probably include such information in the as footnotes and make the adjustment in interim financial statements in the next quarter of the coming year. If it's grievous or fraudulent, we might have to recall the financial statements, recall them, and issue new financials. If the client balks, contact the SEC. So I want you to look at that. There's a problem that Tracy Brewing, I may not get to it today, in which case I'll ask for a few minutes for Monday to go over that particular problem, where it says what are some of the options. Footnote disclosure, recall the financials, make adjustments, and I was going to add a possibility. Let's just start this anyway. And then what we go over is for the Dropbox. What we do Monday doesn't go to the Dropbox. If we, I might need a little bit of time Monday to do a few more of these. Okay, let's take a look. 24-12. See what that one is. Why don't we pass on it? Pass immaterial. 24-13. Oh, don't forget, by the way, I put the notes on the board about when the exam will open Sunday. Don't take it till we've met. And I'm opening it through Thursday of next week. Remember, do the course survey for Bill. Email me a confirmation.
You can't give us till Saturday?
No, because there's too much grading to be done. They want the grades by the weekend.
When you, when are the grades actually due for you guys?
Monday night. But I want to get them done by Sunday because Monday I start classes again. And I'm teaching
So
429, which is a course.
So they'll be posted on September 1st on our transcript?
They're not made available till later, I think. But once I finish the final exams, I'll release the final exam score. Then you know what your grade's going to be because you can see what your total points are.
I just get a raise if I have my transcripts in by September 1st. So.
Well, that should be okay because isn't the 28th, the 30th is Sunday.
Do they have to see a grade or can they see in progress?
They have to see a grade.
Yeah, but September 1st is Tuesday, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I'll have my stuff in. Maybe you could just print out your total points.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, the transcript probably won't be ready until after that. No, I want you to get the raise.
Yeah,
You're
we'll
doing
see.
well in here. I can't.
Well,
believe
I've got I've got 3 classes and one is online, so the guy doesn't know me.
Oh, okay.
So we'll see.
Well, you're fine in here.
Thank you.
Oh, everyone's doing fine. Okay, the review for subsequent period events. This is 2413. 2413. Perform cutoff tests. Perform cutoff tests, in other words, to make sure items are reported in the proper period. They have several. Inquiries of management about subsequent events. Inquiries of management about subsequent events. And I would say you should be aware of subsequent events. You should also be aware of it. If there's some major news in the media about one of your clients, you want to be privy to that. Correspondence with attorneys. Correspondence with attorneys. Review any internal statements prepared subsequent to year end. In other words, if your company prepared a January balance sheet and income statement, you're still out at the audit. That might be relevant to you.
Sorry, restate that one.
Review internal statements prepared subsequent to year end. Now, I'm assuming it would be like a monthly statement because the first quarterly statement would be too late because you'd already be out of there. So any internal statements issued after year end. Review records prepared subsequent to year end. Records prepared subsequent to year end. And what's another area I said you need to look at? As long as you're out on an audit, you got to continue to look at this because these people, what have they been talking about? The minutes. Review the minutes of the board of directors subsequent to year end. And if that doesn't affect your year, it'll help next year's audit team. So review the minutes of the board of directors subsequent to year end. Okay, number 2430, I want to do on Monday. I don't want to rush that. It's Tracy Brewing. I love that problem, so I want to hold it. Let's see if we can get these others done because they're short. 24, let's do the remaining 2. I know it's almost time, but give me another 10 minutes. And then we'll just be one problem delinquent. Okay, 24-28. Let's see what that one is. Oh yeah, Mary Little, Postman Butter. Okay, 2428. This is a shorty. 2428. In analyzing legal expense, Mary Little observes that company has paid legal fees to 3 different law firms during the current year. In accordance with her CPA firm's normal operating practice, she requests a standard attorney letter as of the balance sheet from each of the 3 law firms. Right now she's fine. She's going to incur my wrath in a second. On the last day of the field work, why'd she wait to the last day? Mary notices here that one of the attorney's letters has not yet been received. The second letter contains a statement of fact the law firm deals exclusively in registering patents and they won't comment on any lawsuits or other legal affairs. The third letter states there's an outstanding unpaid bill due from the client and recognizes the existence of a potentially material lawsuit, but they won't comment further to protect the legal rights of the client. Remember one thing, when you're corresponding with the attorneys, the client has to authorize that because of the attorney-client privilege. But if they don't authorize it, we'll give them a disclaimer. Okay, now, Part A says, what about her approach? Well, she screwed up because she should have followed up prior to year end, or prior to the completion of the audit. Now, what should the auditor do about the first letter? You have to contact that first attorney, the one who didn't respond. It recommends here we send out a second request. That will delay the completion of the audit. The client will not be pleased. Or call the client, call the attorney. Call the attorney, or go to the attorney's office. You've got to clarify that. You can't leave that open.
I'm sorry, and A should have been,
Oh, A basically is that she should not have waited to the end of the audit fieldwork. That's my answer. She should have followed up on this several weeks before the completion of the fieldwork, not waited to the last minute. That's why Mary's incurring my wrath. For the first attorney, you've got to send a second letter that will delay the completion of the audit, or talk to the attorney in person, or talk to them by phone. Now, I don't agree. Remember the second letter that says here, the author and I disagree. The second letter said they're involved exclusively in registering patents and they won't comment any further on legal affairs. Don't write this down. The model answer says no additional follow-up is required. I would insist that the second attorney give me a letter that says there's no litigation outstanding as we only are registering patents and there's nothing involved in that area at this time. Why won't they disclose that to me in a letter? I want the letter. Don't tell me we only register patents and we won't have any further comment. Why are you afraid to say there's no litigation outstanding?
Yeah, the refusal to write that letter should be a red flag.
That makes me suspicious, so the model answer is wrong here. On the third letter, you've got a major problem because you've got to have additional information about the nature of the lawsuit. Plus, I'm worried because it says the client owes that attorney money that could affect how effectively they're going to represent the client. So the model answer just says you got to follow up and have more information. But with the money that's owed, you know, if we can't get this information, we got to have a disclaimer. Got to have a disclaimer. Okay, 30 we're letting go for until next time. And finally,
This is the last one, right?
yes,
Okay,
yes,
cool.
yeah, because we got to go. We have just one problem for next week. 24-27, maybe we can do it real short and sweet here. Remember, the drive home will be enterprising because of the construction.
I'm trying to figure out now.
Yeah. Well, as I said, I'm taking the scenic route, and I'm not going to pick up the Eisenhower until later. Okay, well, it deals with contingent liabilities, how much you learn about these. We already talked about that, didn't we, in problem 8? Why don't we let it go?
Awesome.
Awesome, there we go.
Thank you.
Just one problem for next time is Tracy Brewing, so we'll still have the time for the final exam review. Think about the course survey. Don't take the exam until we've met. Yeah, please.
And we're just gonna focus on the chapters and the questions.
Yeah, well, we're going to do one homework problem, Tracy Brewing, 2430, and then we're going right to the rest of the time on the exam.
Of the chapters that we're actually gonna, the questions are presented from?
Oh, well, I'm going to bring my book.
Okay.
I won't have the solutions with me, but I'm going to bring my text, or excuse me, Joan's text. I got to get this back to her. So yes, we'll do the one problem first to kind of get us warmed up, and then we'll start talking about the exam. Now, it's not one of the areas is mine, but the rest is all theirs. You know, remember how the midterm was, so we'll go over it as long as we need to. Up on 10:05.
Okay.
10-4. Thanks, everyone. And you know what to do for the project? Bring that with you on Monday. Everyone knows? Okay, good, good.
Sorry about that. Have a nice week.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Were you done with that?
Yes, sorry.
By the way, Lena, I want to tell you something, too, a second, unrelated to our course. That questionable student I had online, she sent a letter out to the entire class, but left me off. Criticizing me. Does anyone else agree that you know, that Bill was incompetent, rude, did a terrible job? The class was terrible.
That's awful.
Well, 10 students, several students emailed me a copy for my information, and there were 6 or 7 students who to the class, although not knowing that I was going to see it, said, I thought Bill did a great job. He was one of the best professors I've had. I don't know what you're whining about. And then several others just contacted me and said, these words were said, but, you know, so I've got a lot of
Nice.
friends there.
Good.
And one of
You
the
can
students,
document all
in
of
the
that.
online discussion, one of the students who complained about this lady said she laid into this lady now.
Mhm.
And then this Jennifer responded back saying, you got a problem, lady. You are bitter. And if you were a customer, I wouldn't want to have you. If you were a business, I would not patronize you. This lady's got problems. But I was glad to see that I actually had friends. She was hoping that she would get